Well, hi everyone, Lisa Tamati here at Pushing the Limits. It's fantastic to have you all back again. I really appreciate your loyalty. And this week I have a very special guest all the way from Seattle in America, Dr. Kabran Chapek. Dr. Chapek, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's an honor to be here with you, Lisa.
It's fantastic. When one of your assistants reached out to me to see if you had come on my show, and so, I was just so excited when I read the outline of your new book, Concussion Rescue, which we're going to dive into today, because it was like, oh, finally, someone's put this together. A doctor has put this all together in a book that the layperson can understand. So, Dr. Chapek, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you work, and this amazing new book, Concussion Rescue?
So I'm a naturopathic physician, and which if your listeners are not sure what that is, it's looking at treating the whole person, looking at treating the cause versus symptoms. That's the philosophy of naturopathic medicine. And the training in some ways is similar, some ways different to conventional MDs or medical doctors, where we have the basic sciences, but then we have the ologies, oncology, gastroenterology, nutrition, exercise, all of that. So that's kind of my background in training. I work at Amen Clinics, which is based on Dr. Amen's work, and he's a psychiatrist, been doing this for 30 years. And 30 years ago, he said, instead of just talking to people, I need to look at their brains. This is who they are. And so he started imaging people's brains with a type of scan called SPECT, S-P-E-C-T, single photon emission computed tomography. It's kind of like a CT scan, but it's looking at functional aspects. So how is the brain working? And so we have this huge database of scans, 150,000 scans. When patients come in, we can compare their scans to the database. We can do research. And so part of our evaluation is looking at the brain versus just talking. And I love doing labs. I love doing a really comprehensive workup and then individualizing people's treatment plans. That's what gets me excited every day coming to work. And I work in Seattle, as you mentioned. Live here with my wife and 3 kids. And I love running and being outdoors and then doing this work. And I wrote the book Concussion Rescue because, Lisa, there's a silent epidemic. And, I say that because there are 3 million people, at least in the US, who go to the ER every single year who have had a brain injury, concussion, which is a form of mild traumatic brain injury. And there's not a lot of solutions and options for them. And so in my 12 years working in mental health, I'd say that brain injury is a major cause of mental illness, yet no one's talking about it. And it's minimized. And there's we think there's nothing you can do.
Absolutely. So a silent epidemic. So what I find interesting is that if you talk to a lot of people and you ask them, have you had a brain injury? If they come, I get to talk to a lot of people because of my background with story with mum, and a lot of people will go, no, I haven't had a brain injury. And then you go, are you sure you haven't had a brain injury? Most of us have had something along the way, and it could be a long way back, even in our childhood, where we got knocked out on the jungle gyms, or we took a hit to the head in some way, shape or form. And most people have had some sort of brain injury that has left a lasting effect. And people aren't aware of this, are they, generally?
No, it's a myth that, you have to lose consciousness to have had a brain injury, or that you have to have gone to the ER to have a brain injury, or because I had my helmet on, I couldn't have had a brain injury. The helmet just protects the skull. Even whiplash, not hitting your head, can cause a brain injury. And so a brain injury or a concussion is defined as like a hit to the head, or an acceleration, deceleration, meaning like a really fast jolt to the head, like whiplash, is enough to shake the brain inside the skull and cause injury. If you have any change in mental status, like seeing stars, that's enough to damage the brain. The brain is soft like butter. and the skull is hard like a rock with many bony ridges. And it's easy for the brain to be damaged because of that. It's like we're not designed to hit our heads at all, yet we do, and it's cumulative. So we try and ask people who come to the clinics at least 10 times. Like you said, it's perfect. It's like, are you sure? Have you ever fallen out of a tree? You ever dove into a shallow pool? Have you ever had a car accident? Have you ever played contact sports? I had a patient, we can call him Jeremy, who when he was 21, he came to see me, and he had been suicidally depressed since he was 14.
Wow.
And he was this scrawny kid. He was a jazz drummer, really neat kid, but he was smoking pot every day to feel better. He had girlfriend who was very, very poor relationship. She was mean to him. He needed to end the relationship, just couldn't do it, didn't feel strong. And when he came to see us, we scanned his brain, and it was clear he had had an injury. Yet on his history, his intake, there was no evidence of brain injury. He had never said that he had had a brain injury. And so I asked him, have you ever fallen out of a tree? Have you ever dove into a shallow pool, fallen off a horse, off a bike? No, no, no. I said, have you ever played contact sports? And his mother, who was with him, said, oh, yeah, you did start playing football when you were age 13-ish. Wow. And he was matched against the coach's son, who was 6 feet tall, and he was like this scrawny little kid. He just kept getting hit really hard and had headaches. And he that's when his depression and suicidal thoughts started. He was also diagnosed with ADD, and he had tried every class of medication, had tried all kinds of therapy, hypnosis, EMDR, CBT, all these really great therapies, and been referred by a great therapist that I knew. And so when we put him on a program to heal his brain, after a couple of months, his symptoms of depression lifted.
Yep.
And two years later, now fast forward, this spring, he's going to be graduating from the Berklee School of Music for jazz drumming. He stopped smoking pot. So he's doing great. So some people have concussions and brain injuries. It's clear they're not healing.
Yes.
Then there's people who have some other issue, and if you think back, it may be actually due to a brain injury you didn't realize.
Yeah, it is. You know, I just had a question that popped up in my head when you were telling that story. Is even things like having low blood pressure or adrenal fatigue, you know, where you stand up too quickly and you get stars in your eyes for a few seconds, or you know, is even that doing any damage to our heads, to our brains?
It can do a little bit. You mean like that low blood pressure thing?
Yeah,
because you can,
you know, you stand up or you have a bit of adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
That diastolic pressure doesn't come up when you stand up.
Yeah.
And you get starry.
that transient decrease in blood flow to the brain can be damaging. I mean, you'll even pass out eventually. Some people do, because it's such a shock to the brain. But it's transient. So hopefully, you know, you put your head down, you get blood flow again. It's short enough that it's not going to do anything permanent, but low blood pressure is a problem. You know, the brain needs blood flow.
Yeah,
it's
I have before I'm asking selfishly. Yeah,
very common.
Yeah, very low blood pressure, and have that problem often when I stand up, especially in the evenings, and when I've been a bit stressed out and tired, I notice that I get up and I'm like, whoa, you know. I wondered if that, you know, that temporary lack of blood flow could be damaging as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's good, but I don't think it's causing permanent damage as long as you address it. Put your head down, sit down, relax, lay down.
Yeah. Look, now, Dr. Kabran, I wanted to actually dive into the book a little bit and actually work through a couple of the things. Now, with my listeners know my story with my mum. Well, hopefully they do. Most of them would know. And I've got a book coming out too next month on Relentless.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Yes. You know what's really exciting? When I look through your book, a lot of the things that you've written in this book, I've done to my ability. And being in New Zealand, and I didn't have access to things like SPECT scans and a lot of the fancy stuff, but I did what I could. One of the biggest pieces of the puzzle for me was hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I've had a couple of experts on the show, Dr. Scott Scher, was one of those on hyperbaric and how powerful this can be for people with brain injuries. So let's start with hyperbaric. What's on hyperbaric? Is that a part of the teaching?
If I had one magic bullet, if I could only do one thing to heal someone's brain, it would be hyperbaric oxygen.
Wow. Yep. Total agreement there.
Yeah. It's, and listeners probably know, but hyperbaric oxygen is a chamber under pressure, and it pushes oxygen to the deeper structures that haven't been able to heal. And just like a diver has the bends, they go up too fast, they go in this chamber. At higher pressures, this is low pressure over time. So like 40 hours, 80 hours, 120 hours. And I actually was able to participate in a quick study, a pilot study with Zachary Lysted. And he was a high school athlete who had second impact syndrome. So he was put in, I think he was about 14 or so. He was playing football, got hit, went out, went back in, said, "I'm fine, coach, put me back in." Got hit again, massive brain bleed afterwards, in a coma for months, not able to walk and talk. He had to relearn that. And so his parents were huge advocates of that. And that's why we have the Zachary Lysted law, or some version of it, in every state in the US, where if an athlete is suspected of having a concussion, they have to be taken out and assessed by a medical professional before they can be put back in again.
Yes.
When not every state has a seatbelt law yet, surprisingly. So I was able to do a hyperbaric oxygen study with this motivated kid who was recovered a lot, but not fully. And we did 40 sessions of hyperbaric before and after. And of course, it's not 180 degree with just that, but it improved you could see improvements in blood flow in his frontal lobe and his parietal lobe, even 5 years after this massive brain injury.
That's an important point. 5 years after, because a lot of people ask me, well, do I have to have had it in the first few months? And I say, no, can, it can be effect even.
Not too late. And there's another evidence of that. We did a study with 30 retired NFL football players. So now fast forward, these guys are in their 50s and 60s, and it's been like 10, 20 years since they've played football, but terrible looking brains. I mean, really severe damage. And they're starting to have depression. They're starting to have memory problems. They're headed towards dementia. And what we did for them was we gave them supplements. We gave them a healthier diet, treated sleep apnea if needed, and then hyperbaric oxygen for some of them as well. And after 6 months, we were able to rescan their brains, significant improvement. Their quality of life was better, less depression, less anxiety, less depression, or less anger, and better processing speed.
Wow.
So it's not too late.
This is really exciting. I've got a brother who was a professional rugby player, and he's had a number of brain injuries, and I've been trying to get him in the hyperbaric because I have a chamber.
Oh, he needs that.
I'm going to make
Get in there.
This podcast because he won't get in it. and I think it's, what really frustrates me is this is a very simple. So, there's the medical grade hyperbaric facilities, which you have a lot of in America, and then there are mild hyperbaric chambers, and in New Zealand, it's very hard to get access to the medical grade ones. We have them in Auckland and Christchurch Hospital, but they do not believe they are of benefit for brain injury, which is just absolute tragedy.
Ridiculous. Same here. Here. Yeah.
There's only 60 years worth of studies. I just don't get it.
It's frustrating.
And there was one clinic here in the South Island of New Zealand, Dr. Tim Ewer, who has had a proper chamber, a medical grade chamber, and he's just shut his doors after 15 years because he's sick of all the regulations and the problems associated with it. I've heard secondhand, and this is the most powerful. Like, if I had not had this for Mum, I do not think I would have got her back. I did 250 sessions with her, and I ended up opening a mild hyperbaric clinic here, so give it to get
awesome.
My local people access to it, and I'm a really big advocate for it. I've since sold the clinic, but it's now available for other people.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
but it's not. It's using mild hyperbaric. So
Yeah.
which for
That's
brain
fine.
injury, 1.5 atmospheres is
Mm-hmm.
according to Dr. Hart, who you probably know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
says is ideal. Obviously, for other injuries, a little bit higher pressure would be better. But it's so important to share this message that this is
Yeah.
a very powerful, and to have access to it in your local
Mm-hmm.
area. And it isn't just for brain injury, is it? It is for other things.
No, it's especially for strokes. I'm so glad you did that. I'm kind of curious when she started noticing improvement along that 250 sessions, if it was early on and it continued to improve or later on.
We had the first 33 sessions at a commercial dive company who kindly allowed me to use their facility.
Wow.
So I had to sign legal waivers and so on. And I, as soon as I got her out of the hospital, the day I got her out of the hospital, and she was like, 24/7 care, she was completely gone with it. I took her down to the factory, put her on a forklift in the middle of this factory and stuck her in the chamber, much that everybody thought I was nuts, right? Because nobody knew what this was. We had 33 treatments at that place, and in the month following, the chamber then got taken off overseas on a contract, and I lost access to it. And so for a month, I had no chamber while I was ordering one from China. And in that month is where I saw huge gains as her body caught up with it, and she started to have,
yes, it's cumulative.
Yes, she started to have more speech, wanting to move her arms and trying to communicate, and so it wasn't like up and walking or anything like that immediately, but she was starting to have a little bit of intention to what she wanted and was trying to communicate and so on. You can see that this was
awesome.
Really, and then as she came back, then I had more to work with other things, and unfortunately I didn't have spec scans. I wish I could have had spec scans all the way through this, to prove,
document
that this was what was happening. So
the hyperbarics, mostly we have the same problem in the US as far as access. So there are a lot of clinics with the mild hyperbaric, and I think it works great. And I recommend people, they can rent chambers for a couple of months and try and get in those 40 to 80 hours in the chamber. And I see it work all the time. I tend to layer it in. That's kind of a clinical pearl, is like, if you have the finances and resources and have access to it, there's no reason not to do it anywhere along the process. But because it is time intensive and costly, at least make sure you have the other elements in first: nutrition, supplements, physical alignment, sleep. Start to rehabilitate with brain exercises, and add in hyperbaric if there's any plateauing along the way, maybe after a couple of months after starting the nutrients. That's what I recommend often for patients.
Let's go into this, the methodology here a little bit, and dig deeper into when I was doing my research, I tried to get her on, the good fats, MCT oils, fish oils, that sort of thing.
Awesome.
At the beginning, she could hardly eat because she couldn't chew. So most of her nutrition was green smoothies, whatever I could get down her.
Okay.
And so, nutrition-wise, what are some of the supplements that we can, because whatever you do before you go into hyperbaric will be intensified, won't it? Like if you have, things like vitamin C infusions or anything like that. Is that for example, a good thing to be doing? And do you
IVs prior to hyperbaric and MCT prior to hyperbaric, and especially a ketogenic diet with hyperbaric I think enhances the whole. They're synergistic. They both have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects, and they both increase healing of the mitochondria, turning on genes. So the whole reason I think that ketogenic diet is worth looking at, it's not right for everyone. You always want to check with your doctor before starting it, but it's it's not just for weight loss. It's kind of a fad right now in the US. Is it in New Zealand?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, across the world, pretty much. And it's a low fat, or it's a low carbohydrate diet, less than 30 grams of carbs a day, which isn't much.
No.
And so that forces the body to burn fats for fuel. Your brain is very hungry, using 20 to 30% of calories in your diet, which is like a quarter of your plate. Think about it. 2% of your body weight brain using 20 to 30% of calories in your diet. It's so hungry. But yet when there's injury or there's some neurological problem, typically there's a metabolic deficit. The brain is not able to use as much fuel. As mitochondria are damaged, the brain is damaged. And so the ketone bodies, which are produced from a ketogenic diet, don't take as many steps to get into the brain to be used as fuel, whereas sometimes the glucose transporters are damaged. Like in dementia and brain injury, there's a lot of correlates between the two. There's difficulty in utilizing and accessing glucose for this hungry organ. You know, right after brain injury, there's this metabolic deficit, this drop in glucose metabolism after about 10 to 30 minutes, which continues to stay low for weeks. And so this hungry organ now doesn't have enough glucose. That's part of the problem.
Exacerbates the whole problem. I mean, that is part of what causes dementia, isn't it? When you, if we dive into like insulin resistance caused, you know, by a bad diet for many years, leading to or contributing to Alzheimer's and dementia. So this is a similar effect happening with a brain injury, but a bit quicker.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we can't get the glucose in. So it's really, really crucial. If you are not on a keto diet and you just add in exogenous ketones, is that enough? Is that going to benefit?
That's a great question. I think it's worth trying. The research doesn't, it's unclear in my mind, because they've tried giving, so there's a study because they had patients in comas and they gave them, because they know about this metabolic deficit, they gave them IV glucose thinking, let's just give them glucose. And what happened was it suppressed their little bit of ketone production. They had like 16% ketones.
Yes.
Which were fueling the brain a little bit, and that totally squashed that. And so a little bit, so it's not the answer. We need to shift towards burning fats for fuel, burning ketones for fuel. So adding exogenous ketones, there's various studies where they've, I think, added lactate and different sort of fuel sources, and so far haven't been that successful. I think was probably the best. I mean, if I had a brain injury myself or my loved ones, my family members, I'm giving them exogenous ketones right away. Yeah. You know, Keto OS or some sort of product. And just in the hopes that they're getting some more fuel for their brain with all of the nutrients that they should be receiving. But it's, if you're on a ketogenic diet, MCTs and the exogenous ketones absolutely enhance the process. If you're eating a crap diet, lots of sugar, processed foods, I don't think it's going to help much.
Which is a standard hospital fare, you know, things like Ensure, you know, like we had those Ensure, and I'm like, you know, not
high sugar.
I didn't find that out, unfortunately, during the initial phases, but what I did do is at least I brought in my own smoothies and made my own concoctions while she was.
Oh, that's awesome. They allowed you to do that.
Yeah, well, yes. I didn't always ask permission, Dr. Chapek.
That's what you have to do.
I thought DHA and, you know, and fish oils and things like that.
Awesome.
As well, and I wish I'd known more earlier. Some of these things, you know, I did later on as I got more and more research. But I think so. If you can't get the patient to do a ketogenic diet, at least try with the exogenous ketones would be the best.
Right, and do a lower carb diet.
Carb diet.
No sugar, just, you know, it can be in a stepwise process. First, cut out all extra sugar, no cookies, cakes, candy, sweets, especially right after an injury or at any point. Then second step would be protein at each meal. Meat, eggs, grass-fed, beef, chicken, whatever. Then adding more vegetables, and then more healthy fats, avocados, coconut oil. And so even doing that, like, is there studies showing that if someone these are actually animals who were on a high sugar diet compared to those who were on a normal rat chow diet. And then given a brain injury, those on a high sugar diet, those rats had a lot more concussive symptoms.
Wow.
And took longer to recover.
And this is, I think, transgressing a little bit into dementia and Alzheimer's, also a huge epidemic. And the thing is, we can see this coming 10 years down the track, this is also a very important point for, and I have the Broken Brain series by Dr. Hyman and a lot of the experts in that area. Dementia and Alzheimer's is known as the type 3 diabetes, and understanding the influence of sugar and insulin resistance and not getting enough glucose, as we mentioned before, is something that people can do to protect their brain health now, years out from actually developing the disease, which is really, late in the piece.
Yes, exactly.
So for elderly people, especially, trying to keep your brain function going, if you're noticing memory changes and this sort of thing, at least cut the sugar out of your diet as quick as you can. Obviously, it's in so much, and this is the insidious problem, and a lot with older people. They've eaten the meat and 3 veggies and the white bread and all the things, and they go, but that's not sugar,
Right. Well, I had a patient who, I think she was about 75 when she came in. Her son brought her in, and she had moved to the area from, I think, Indiana or Chicago, somewhere in the Midwest. And she had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and was prescribed Aricept medication, sort of get your things in order and see you later. That was kind of it. It's very sad, the current approach to dementia. And understandably, the doctors may not have a lot of options. They've got their meds, but we do have more options, actually. And so she came in, we assessed her. Yep, you've got mild cognitive impairment, maybe early stages of Alzheimer's. She was living in a retirement home and just near a little downtown, couldn't remember how to get down a few blocks to the downtown to do her shopping. She had to draw maps, and she couldn't remember her list, even if she was just like 3 things, had to write lists, and was having a lot of difficulties. So when she came in, we put her on this program, great program, supplements, nutrition, exercise, and let's see you back in a month. So, and cut out your sugar, because she wasn't overweight. So she thought, I deserve to have my, at the retirement home, my treats. She had a Frappuccino at breakfast. She's having ice cream and cookies because it's free. It's just like at the retirement home.
Oh, dear.
Self-serve ice cream. I said, you got to cut out the sugar. Just cut out the sugar. Let's do that first. Try and eat more protein and less carbs, which is, like you mentioned, take the bun off the burger. Just, even if it's not like the best quality meat, that's fine. Just cut out the carbs first. And so she came back a month later, and she was now able to, even just a month, she's able to find her way downtown.
Wow.
And she could remember that at least 3 things on her list. She couldn't remember everything, but 3 things she could remember. And I said, I'm patting myself on the back. Oh my God, you did everything. My protocol is like perfect. And she's like, I didn't take any of the supplements that you recommended. Oh boy. And I didn't do the exercise, but I did cut out the sugar. And just cut it.
Just cut it. In
low
1
carb
month.
diet.
In 1 month, you saw a change. Did she subsequently do the rest?
So then she was willing to do more. And so each thing she added, like we added curcumin, we added a brain supplement that had ginkgo and huperzine. Each thing she added, she got a little bit more improvement over the subsequent months. And that's what I found. Folks, they may be a little mistrustful, and so they want to try just one thing at a time. And luckily, that was the thing that was really slowing her progress down and improved her.
Oh man, that's so exciting, like to see, and you get people that have been on drugs and they've tried things and they have just, and these are not dangerous things to cut out sugar and take a few supplements, like we're not asking to do some hyperbaric, perhaps.
Right, the side effect is better health overall. I mean, there's no side
Exactly,
effects.
and that is always going to benefit your brain. If any time that you mentioned curcumin, which is your turmeric, which is another thing that I still have some on, and I'm on.
Great.
What are some of the other supplements? Like, is there a list of supplements that you give out as a standard, or do you tailor them to each particular patient and their requirements?
Everyone's tailored, but there are some that I keep coming back to because they work.
Those, so that our people can, our listeners can go and get them now.
Yes. Well, NAC is probably available there as a supplement.
Yes.
N-acetylcysteine.
Yep.
Precursor to glutathione, anti-inflammatory. And just a little piece of information too. They did this double-blind placebo-controlled trial in 2013 where they had active service members who had a concussion, like in the field. So they had a IED blast or something, and then were carried or taken to the medic, and they gave them NAC. Well, this is a double-blind trial, so NAC or placebo. And they were given a lot of it, and I'll tell you the dose in a second. After a week, 86% of them recovered from their concussive symptoms, whereas 42% recovered who weren't given NAC.
Wow.
And so they were given 4 grams immediately. Days 1 through 4, they were given 2 grams twice a day. And days 5 through 7, they were given 1.5 grams twice a day. So that's like an acute protocol, but NAC is important even after the fact, because even though the research is mostly on acute brain injury, we know the mechanisms. Many of them are exactly the same in chronic brain injury and concussion, and so they apply. So NAC applies, curcumin definitely.
NAC is N-acetylcysteine. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, okay, and curcumin, which is your turmeric. What sort of dosage for that one?
I would do about 1,000 milligrams a day of a high quality one, and it needs to be. You can use that acutely and also chronically. It helps to open up aquaporins. So these are water channels in the brain, and can decrease swelling, which is especially important acutely for brain injury. Like there's this pastor who was in a car accident, I always remember, and 2 weeks later, he thought he was fine. Went to the ER, checked out, you're fine. No brain bleed, good. And he went home, he seemed to be okay. But 2 weeks later, he couldn't write a sermon. And I think what happened is the swelling was very gradual and slow, not enough to be life-threatening, but eventually it pushed on some of the brain regions, the temporal lobes, frontal lobes, and he started having cognitive problems. So there can be this delayed
response, which is logical. Like when you cut yourself, you don't see the swelling straight away. You see it a day or two as it goes into the healing process.
Exactly. Vitamin D is important. So as a fat-soluble vitamin, almost more like a hormone, turns on many different genes and helps modulate inflammation in the brain. Vitamin C. I use 5,000 IUs. Vitamin D. Vitamin C is as a buffered antioxidant, water soluble. The brain actually does well with more vitamin C, even though it's just a simple thing everyone knows about it. It really does help decrease inflammation, that oxidative stress in the brain. 1,000 milligrams at least a day. Omega-3 fatty acids, and I like using ones that are a little higher EPA to DHA, which most are. EPA for inflammation, DHA to help rebuild the neuron in the cell membrane. And we try to use 3 grams a day of EPA DHA total. That's what we use in the football player study. MCT oil, of course, you mentioned. And other things.
Fish oil, it's important that you look for a very good quality one. What do you what's your take on the oxidative problem? You know, with the some of the lower price fish oils tend to have a lot of oxidation going on. Do you see that as a problem?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Quality is really key, especially for fish oil, like vitamin D, vitamin A, some of these nutrients. There's only a few manufacturers. Like in the US, there's only, I think, 3 places that actually make vitamin E, and every other supplement company just packages it up and charges different amounts. Vitamin E. Omega-3 is not like that. It's really individualized per company, and you need to check quality, and there can be heavy metals in the fish. It can be oxidized, like you said, if it's not processed properly. So that's when I wouldn't go for the cheap stuff.
Okay, very, very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Talking on heavy metal toxicity, sorry, going a little bit off track, and we'll come back
That's
to
fine.
the supplements. I've done hair tissue mineral analysis with Mum. She's got like mercury. What would be your recommendation for getting rid of, chelating these heavy metals out of our body? Is there anything we can do on a supplement level for that type of thing?
Well, yes. So one, there's a lot there. First, making sure your organs of elimination are working. Which are organs of elimination are sweating, so the skin, breathing out toxins, pooping out toxins, having good bowel movements and not being constipated, and then urinating them out, staying hydrated and peeing them out. So once all of those are open, then you can start sort of facilitating removal of metals or all toxins. And the fact that she has mercury, she probably has other things too. So solvents, mold should be always assessed for. And so I do love saunas and sweating, because Dr. Genius from Canada did a really interesting study where he looked at, so what does sauna do? Like, what is it actually eliminating? And they measured in the sweat of people doing sauna, it eliminates mold, metals, and just chemicals, solvents. So it does all 3.
Wow.
So that's why I love sauna, because it's going to remove all of them. And it's also been shown, study out of Finland, if you're doing sauna more frequently, lower chances of dementia. In fact, was it 2,000 Finnish men or 20,000? There was a lot of them in any case. And after they followed them over many years, and they found that the more saunas that they did, like 5 to 7 days a week, they had 30% less risk of Alzheimer's versus those that just did it 1 day a week. So it's multiple reasons to do saunas and sweating. And actually, in the same study, through exercise sweat, also cleansing and detoxifying. So the fact that you're a runner and running all that you have been is cleansing. Yeah.
Exercise, is a huge piece of this puzzle for brain injury, as well as detoxifying. And I totally, as someone who sweats every single day, pretty much of their life, and I like even compared just to my siblings. I can see lots of things happening in their bodies that isn't happening in mine yet. And I believe a lot of it is the daily sweating, the daily blood flow, the oxygenation of the tissues. These things are hugely important for, and also for, cognitive stuff as well. With Mum, I have her doing at least 2 hours of aerobic activity, very low level. We're talking on a stationary bicycle and walking. That's all she can manage, obviously, at 78. But 2 hours a day. And
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
much
awesome.
Quicker, sometimes she doesn't want to.
Got to crack the whip.
I'm definitely the drill sergeant. That oxygen, that movement, that is very, very, very important, I believe, in repairing her brain.
Yeah, that's key. Exercise is so important. Increasing blood flow, it increases, especially intense aerobic exercise, increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like miracle growth for the neurons. And the more intense, the more you produce. And there's supplements that increase BDNF a little bit, medications a little bit, but exercise trumps them all.
It does. Yep.
Absolutely. Much more.
What about nerve growth factor? Is that also influenced by
nerve growth factor?
Yeah.
Yes. Also, Same, influenced by exercise. Interval training will increase nerve growth factor. And like you said, increasing blood flow in general is needed. And this is aerobic exercise versus anaerobic or strength training. And then, I was just going to say about this cleansing effect of exercise. An endurance athlete like you probably does sweat, for 45 minutes or so. But folks like your average person like myself, I may go for a 15-minute run. I'm not going to sweat as much as I would in a sauna. So just keep that in mind. So people listening, just because you're doing a little bit of sweating, that's probably not enough if you really have a problem with toxicity. You'd want to actually do some sauna and sweat for a really good sweat for 20 to 40 minutes several times a week.
Yeah, and that's something, a problem I have with Mum. Like I couldn't put her in a sauna. I don't know why, but she has temperature regulation problems. Is that a brainstem?
Hypothalamus, brainstem, probably damaged.
Yeah.
So hypothalamus is your thermostat.
Yeah, well, she seems to have no tolerance to heat. She's good in the cold, but as soon as the heat, like we're in the middle of summer here, and it's a struggle at the moment, so her cognitive abilities do decline, and quite quickly she overheats. Is there anything you can do for that?
I'm not sure. How does she do with cold?
She's much better with cold. She copes very well with cold. But heat just, like her ability to walk and so on is impaired quite considerably.
Yeah, I would say may not be able to do the sweating, but it's interesting that she does well with cold, and maybe even pushing that further and considering cold therapy. Like water bath, like Wim Hof, sort of Iceman training.
Love that as well. Do that as well. It's really interesting. So, and I think these extremes and change is the key factor here too.
Stimulating. Yeah.
And because if you think about it, we came from, in our caveman days, we were exposed to the elements. We were exposed to cold. We weren't comfortable all day in a comfortable temperature. And I think having exposure to what was natural is often a benefit, and being connected. A
bit of stress helps us to become more resilient and stronger. I totally couldn't agree more. Exercise, cold and hot, challenging the brain training, all of these are really important.
Absolutely. So going back to the supplement regime, is there anything else that because we sort of went off tangent, was there anything else that you'd say is a must-have if you've got a brain injury?
So alpha GPC, really important for acetylcholine. And after stroke, 1,200 milligrams, got to do that. So I don't know if she's taking alpha GPC, but that's worth a try.
Have her on acetylcholine. Is that different to alpha GPC?
Phosphatidylcholine?
No, acetylcholine.
Acetylcholine. So the acetylcholine is the actual neurotransmitter that you're trying to make. So acetyl L-carnitine. Yes,
I have in the past had her on that. Is that good?
Yep. That is also good. Helps the mitochondria. Alpha GPC will help her make more acetylcholine and also help the neuron. Phosphatidylserine is another really good one for memory. There's not as much research on that for brain injury, but I still think it's really helpful for memory and cognition because 10% of your brain is made out of this phosphatidylserine. It's in the cell membranes.
Okay, I have that one. And
that's really good.
Okay.
Over the counter as a supplement. It's I'd give it to kids. I mean, it's so safe, this stuff, but it really is helpful. Alpha GPC, potentially, so ginkgo, 120 milligrams to 240 of ginkgo biloba extract, really good for blood flow. Huperzine A, Chinese club moss, is a natural acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So it sort of increases your body's own acetylcholine. I wouldn't give that for acute brain injury, but chronic brain injury, dementia, any other chronic.
How do you spell that one? Huperzine.
Huperzine. Huperzine. It's Chinese club moss. It's from Chinese club moss. And it's a
I think
helpful one.
why you have to go out and actually buy Concussion Rescue, because this sort, you know, this sort of level of information in one single sitting is
There's a lot.
I mean, I spent months and months researching to come up with the bits and pieces that I came up with, and you've written a book that actually gives people a first aid kit for brain injury and a protocol to follow.
Yeah.
And this is just so exciting, you know. I'd love to.
Thank you.
If you were down the road, I'd love to go on a speaking tour with you and give like the experiential side of it and then the clinical side of it. Wouldn't that be just fabulous?
Let's do it. I'll come down to New Zealand. I've been needing an excuse, so.
Oh, please. Oh, that would like talk afterwards, or I'll come to America and because this, we're talking millions of people being affected by brain injury every year, and most people are not given anything except, you know, well, not even the diet recommendations, like
the basics.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Sad, and there are just so many people suffering in silence, and it's an insidious thing, because with brain injuries, as with dementia, you don't see on the outside the stuff that's going on. So a lot of the people that would come to our hyperbaric clinic would be so in tears that people don't. When I understood the pain that they were going through, because people could not see an injury. If it's a young man and he looks healthy, and he can't stand the light, and he can't stand the noise, and he's fatigued all the time. And people are just thinking you're being a wimp, you know?
Right. And he starts to wonder, what's wrong with me? Maybe I am a wimp. Maybe I don't know what's going on.
It's so sad. And then things like depression and personality changes, where we think someone's just become a horrible person. When actually they're dealing with really cognitive problems. So having understanding for people who have dementia, who have personality changes, who have things going on that it may be not their fault, you know.
Right. Yes.
And
I have to say that's one benefit of having the ability to do imaging, or at least some kind of cognitive tool or test. But the imaging is just so powerful, because when you show someone their brain, and you show their family members their brain, that's when the tears come, because it's like, oh my God, it's not only diagnostic, but it's therapeutic. They understand. There is an injury.
Yes.
It's a medical problem.
Physical injury, and they can see it, and they feel, oh my gosh, it's not all my fault, and I'm not being a neurotic or you know, being told there's nothing wrong with you. Get on with it.
Right.
And they know instinctively that there's something wrong, but nobody's believing them, and that is very, very painful. And I wish we had SPECT scans here. We don't have access to them, and I wish I'd had that through the journey to be able to what we
just thinking what else is available. You know, there's cognitive testing that can be done just to document difficulty in memory and focus and things.
Can you do that without a clinician, or do you?
Yeah. You can do on our website, brainhealthassessment.com. I can't remember if there's a fee, or it doesn't cost very much to do. And you can measure where you're at as far as, you know, focus, memory, different aspects. In the clinic, we use something called Web Neuro, and that's a web-based cognitive test that people do. It's computerized, it measures attention, memory, also emotion. And this brain health assessment is the exact same test.
Wow.
So it's high quality, and there's pencil paper tests, and there's also labs that can be done to measure if there's damage to the pituitary gland. It's a whole other issue, because 25 to 50% of people with a history of brain injury have damage to the pituitary gland. It's their master hormone gland. And maybe a little more accessible.
Let's dive into this. So hormone disruption from pituitary. So what are the labs that you could do to test whether you have, and how do you talk the doctor into doing them?
Yeah, that's half the battle, isn't it? I would just say, you know, bring in the research. There's plenty of studies showing that, you know, this is some studies say 25, some say 50%, some say even more. If there's, I've had a brain injury, this is what happens. And you can document that by measuring pituitary function. And, you can actually measure in the blood work pituitary hormones. Like for testosterone, the precursor or the stimulus is LH and FSH. This is all in the book too. It's in all the labs and stuff. For thyroid, instead of having what normally is a high TSH and a low T3, T4, there's actually low TSH and low T3, T4, which means the pituitary is not sending the signal to the thyroid gland.
Oh, wow. Is that so? Is that causing then the more reverse T3 and free T3, and it's not docking on the receptor, or is it?
Oh, you're very sophisticated with your knowledge. That's great. I'm impressed.
I'm trying to work out thyroid because this is been part of Mum's problem. And,
right. High reverse T3.
Yes, I've been arguing with the doctor again and again. I want a full panel, and I cannot get a full panel.
I see.
They won't do free T3.
Oh, that's too bad.
They do antibodies and TSH and T4, and that's all I can get out of them at the moment. So
right. So if you do, if you just do a TSH, which is the standard for screening, that's not going to tell us really what's going on, because if it's low TSH, they may say, "Oh, you're fine. It's not too." It's a kind of TSH is reverse, where if it's low, you're hyperthyroid. If it's high, you're hypothyroid typically. But if you're low, plus your T3 and T4 are low, it's a pituitary issue, actually.
Wow. Okay.
So that's important to know. In any case, looking at ACTH and cortisol is for adrenal. And then, of course, testosterone for men, estrogen, progesterone for women, and LH, FSH. Those would probably be the main ones. And just say, "Hey, doctor, please test these labs. You may have to pay out of pocket or whatever." I don't know if you have labs where you can just...
We do have basic labs, but if you want anything, things like cortisol, I do regularly, and that you have to pay for.
Right.
So someone like Mum has obviously got adrenal issues. So, but
sure.
Like things like estrogen, LH, FSH, in an older female, that would be...
Oh, it's going to be high.
It's different than
True.
So how would I read? That's a very deep clinical question.
Well, I guess if it's low, then there's pituitary issues. It should be high in menopause. You're going to have high LH. What happens is the ovaries stop producing estrogen, but the brain thinks they still should be. So the brain sends a lot of LH and FSH down to the ovaries. And so that's how you know you're in menopause, if you have high LH and FSH. So then if you measure those after menopause and it's really low, that would be very unusual.
Okay.
And that would be, the pituitary is not working.
And if the pituitary is not working, is there anything you can do about that?
Oh, great question. All of these things should help heal the pituitary. Actually, balancing the hormones. So adding in estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, looking at growth hormone. That's the other one I forgot to mention. If growth hormone is low, that's very common in pituitary damage, and can really, if you can increase growth hormone, that helps with healing of the whole brain and the body.
Wow.
Best done through exercise again. And then taking the supplements, putting the brain in a healing environment will help the pituitary to also heal. So that's the supplements, diet, exercise, hyperbaric. So the hyperbaric is very helpful for pituitary damage as well.
That's really good. Growth hormone, actually taking a supplement, is there any danger with that in regards to cancer?
I always talk with people about that. Like if you had a tumor and you have lots of growth hormone, you might potentiate growth of a tumor.
Yeah.
So that's like balancing the two. It's like, do we want lots of growth factors, or do we want to keep, like there's this whole thing about low calorie diet and low IGF-1, which is a marker for growth hormone.
Mm-hmm.
There's this field there, so it's really a balance of the two. It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
I don't actually recommend people do growth hormone because you can become dependent on it, and it's expensive. It's like over $1,000 a month, something like that. But you can, again, exercise. There's supplements, ornithine, arginine, this product called Tri-Amino. There's various companies that make it, and there's 3 amino acids that are helpful in making growth hormone and taken at bedtime.
Yep. So like valine, isoleucine, that type of thing, or?
Yeah, I think it's arginine, ornithine, and there's one other. But it's 3 amino acids in particular without other amino acids. You just want those 3. And on an empty stomach. And if you're really going for it, I talk about this in the book, but prior to exercise or empty stomach at night, because you produce most of your growth hormone at night when you're in deep sleep. That's why deep sleep is it's one of the reasons why it's so important.
Wow. I hope people are listening, because I've just done a couple of podcast episodes on sleep and the importance of sleep. And
good.
And when you don't have enough sleep. And growth hormone is one of those things, and your hormone regulation in general. I was going to go, sleep apnea, you mentioned there briefly, or sleep disruption. Sleep apnea was another big key for Mum's.
Oh, good. Yes.
So I worked out when I was in hospital, when she was still in hospital, she'd been on oxygen in Wellington, and when they transferred her to New Plymouth, she was taken off the supplemental oxygen, and I noticed a decline in her, what was already terrible, but was even worse. And I tried to get them to put the supplemental oxygen back on, and they wouldn't. And I've had experience with altitude, racing at altitude. And I'd been in a hypoxic tent at night where the oxygen, and I had given myself a hypoxic brain concussion a few years ago, going up too high too fast because I was impatient. I sleep 6,500 meters every night, all night.
Wow.
Knocked off a lot of brain cells, have hypoxic brain concussion. And during that time when I did this, I had a whole lot of infections because the bacteria in the body, oxygen deficit. And so I was recognizing some of these mum when she was in the hospital still. And so my brain went tick, 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 apnea, sleep apnea, because she was sleeping, of course, 20, 21 hours a day. And the doctor again said, no, you don't need to do a sleep apnea test. And I went and got an outside consultant, brought him in. I got in big trouble. I didn't really care. Brought in this outside consultant. He did a test, and it came back severe sleep apnea. And from my research into sleep apnea, there are a lot of people suffering from sleep apnea who are not aware that they're suffering from sleep apnea. Do you think this is also a massive contributor to brain injury over time? Oh,
absolutely. Brain problems in general. I think luckily people are recognizing it more and screening more, and needs to be done. If you're sleeping a lot like your mom was, or not feeling rested, or waking up at night a lot. In fact, my father, who has had chronic sleep problems, I've tried to give him every supplement under the sun, can't seem to get his sleep under control. He just did a sleep study. It turns out he has mild sleep apnea, and that was causing him to wake up frequently throughout the night.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? And things like even like adrenal exhaustion, your cortisol levels going up in the middle of the night. Like that type of thing. I mean, I'm very much into, breathing exercises and trying to get the parasympathetic nervous system, blue blocking at night, all of those things that contribute to good sleep health, being very important. Again, on a tangent, we in our company we do epigenetic testing, and this looks at the person's genetics and how they're expressing right now. And one of the key things there is to understand what time of the day the chronobiology is very very important. So if your hormones are replacing between 5 and 6 in the morning, and you're getting up at 5 a.m. to do a CrossFit workout, that can be very detrimental to your health as well.
Right.
Shift work and so on. Look, Dr. Kabran, I know that you've got to go shortly. I just want to, where can people reach out to you? And I definitely want to talk to you further, because this is the most fascinating conversation I think I've ever had. And so exciting. I can't wait for the book to arrive in the post. Where can people reach you? Where can they get the book? And what are the next steps for people who are suffering from brain injury?
Well, great. I've really enjoyed talking with you too. I can feel your passion and excitement to help others, and that's what my heart's about too, because your brain is like, that's everything.
Yeah.
That's who we are. It's our personality. That's why I do this work, is to help people recover and optimize their brain function, because I want you to be able to share your gifts with the world and just be yourself. And it's never too late. I'd like to end with that. It's never too late to at least try and help heal your brain from brain injury. You and your mother are proof of that. I'm so excited to read your book as it comes out next month. Congratulations. You can find my book, Concussion Rescue. It's out, just released January 28th on Amazon. There's an Audible version for people who want to listen to it. We recorded a video series that's available beginning of February on the book. At Amen University, it's available there. And I'm at Amen Clinics Northwest in Seattle. You can just Google that, Amen Clinics Northwest. And Seattle location, there's clinics all around the country. And
like personally as well?
Do I have my own website?
Yeah.
I don't. I tried to, and I'm not that tech savvy, so.
Okay, you must get you.
Gotta get me going there.
Yeah, you do.
Modern age.
Yes, you do.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook too.
Excellent. So people can reach you, Dr. Kabran Chapek. Sorry. Concussion Rescue. I'll get all those links from you, Dr. Kabran, to share with the audience. And if I can help with any way, shape, or form with getting this book out there, we've got to make this a bestseller around the world, because this is absolute crucial work that you're doing, and I'm really, really, really stoked that I've had you on the show. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Kabran.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.